When we do videos regarding Antarctica here at the Florida Maquis, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the Hollywood-esque aspect of it. Meaning, we've shown a lot of images that look like dragons. We've shown a lot of images that look like aliens. But if there were truly a culture down there that survived for any amount of time, the vast majority of the evidence will be very mundane, which is why I've really liked to use this particular artist's rendering over and over again. Because off to the far right, it just shows a simple, humble dwelling of some kind, with some light peeking through a window with a small stairway, and just a generic bridge off to the left. The amount of engineering this would take, however, in Antarctica would require a great deal of effort, even if the cavern that you're looking at was a natural occurring thing. And then to maintain life down there would take other levels of engineering, and in today's video, that's kind of the direction I wanted to go. The engineering of Antarctica. What would it really take on the ground to begin to migrate there? Because looking at the way the mainstream media is now completely dominating the thought life of North Americans, only free-thinking people would have this interest. Because if you're somebody who gets up every day and looks at the media and goes, well, that's what I need to profess today, that's what I need to believe today, then you'll enjoy living in North America. But for those of us who have a different take, those of us who want to have our own thoughts and be our own persons, places like Antarctica are very alluring. Even something simple like this, which is what looks like a small bar, small establishment with seating for maybe 30. This would take a great deal of engineering, but I do believe it would be worth it in the long run to have a place that would have a different set of rules. It would take a great deal of time, though. I think that would be the biggest impediment. People today in North America want to see a plan that they can execute in 16 to 18 months, maybe 2 years tops. People forget that coming to the New World here, when they arrived, the people on the ships, there were forests as far as the eye could see. There were oceans full of fish. There was forests full of game, rivers to be harvested, fresh water everywhere. All sorts of advantages. In fact, in some ways, more habitable than places in Europe. And it was still hundreds of years from the first arrivals in the late 1400s and 1500s to when we actually saw what could be seen as nations. It was hundreds of years. And Antarctica is much more foreboding. But nations are doing it. This is part one in a series from Jamestown.org. Is Russia preparing to challenge the status quo in Antarctica? This article talks about how much effort they are putting into that continent because they've seen the value in it. 80% of the drinkable fresh water is there. 80% of the planet's drinkable fresh water is there. That alone should make anybody sit back and think. And this article, which actually made its way all the way to CNN, and they reported it accidentally as the truth, people don't understand what this headline really means. Ice sheets can melt much faster than we thought. What that means in physics, however, is the exact opposite is also true. Meaning, ice sheets can freeze over much faster than we thought. Meaning that Antarctica might not have been frozen for nearly as long as we thought. Scientists have already agreed unanimously that the image you're looking at here is representative of what Antarctica looked like at some point in the past. How long ago in the past, however, I think is going to be revised in the next few years, from millions of years to thousands of years to perhaps regions of it being much, much, much less than that. And I'm going back to this old map that we have used so many times in so many different videos to show a point. This is a map from roughly the 1600s, but there's a great deal of information on it if you understand the culture of the time. Making maps at this time was an incredibly expensive, difficult, time-consuming, labor-intensive process. Things were not included on maps that were irrelevant. This is why, today, it's easy to make maps. You can just print them off. And they're super accurate as far as the actual lay of the land. But back then, maps acted like intelligence reports for kings and queens, and map makers used their talents, applied their talents to multiple governments. In this particular one, we can see a great many things. Now, forget whether or not this river looks exactly this way. What it shows is who's occupying this land. But look in the background up here. Now, in the 1600s, Portugal, France, Great Britain, Spain, Italy did not have Tudor-style housing built in Brazil. They did not have castles with arrow slits and parapets built in Brazil in 1600. Many of us have been fallen prey to the notion that the ancients were these super, super advanced, highly technologically advanced beings. The imagery here shows the giants were very, very different. They're not even wearing clothes, and they're using bows and arrows. In others, they show axes and spears. But it does show, unfortunately, cannibalism here, which is something that is still found, but not amongst these people, because they're gone. But the flag here, the flag is very important. I have done a ton of research on what this flag could possibly represent. It's a blue flag with gold trim, and it has 5 dice on it, each rolling 5. Now, strangely enough, one of the common terms used, remember the Stargate series that talked about Antarctica so much? They always said, I read you 5 by 5. I read you 5 by 5. Nobody really knew what that meant. It meant loud and clear in the series, but nobody ever really knew where they got the 5 by 5. The closest I could get with that map of that flag was this. King John II of Portugal, 1485. But this would make that map far, far older. This would make that map 200 years older than what it's reported to be. And once again, ink was expensive. The artists that could create images like this were rare, few and far between, and didn't work cheap. The parchment itself wasn't easy to find sometimes. So when you created a map like this, you wanted to have a reputation for being accurate. A large winged serpent chasing a giant holding a shield would seem like an incredible waste of time and ink and effort if it wasn't correct. The image on the left is very, very real, very, very easy to find in Antarctica, and down in the description I'll show you where you can download Google Earth Pro and you can go look at this for yourself. The engineering it would have taken, though, would have been incredible, because this picture on the right I pulled off the internet to try to kind of make it something where you could see it from the other side. This isn't even hardly quite big enough, though. Width-wise, the reason I use this image on the right is width-wise it is. This opening is actually almost as big as a 2-lane highway with a suicide lane in the middle, a third turning lane. That's how wide this opening is. And as tall, it's much taller than this cavern here. But of course, seeing it from satellite, it just looks like a dot. But whatever this is, it's clearly engineered. Clearly. There's no way this would be created naturally in the side of a mountain. The amount of time it would take to create even something simple like this little walkway with an archway supported, would take many men and many years. So I think going down there, you would have to make a plan for that. Now, just to show some actual images real quick that don't include dragons, don't include aliens, don't include anything like that. To prove this, this was one of the first ones that was brought to me that really stood out. Now, it's kind of hard to look at in context, but what you're looking at here is a lower area where you see this snow. And on the sides here, over here to the left, and here it rises up. There was at one time what looks like a bridge that if you look here where I'm tracing with the cursor, do you see how this white is a little bit different than the snow white behind it? This is where the bridge ends on this side, and it's collapsed. This is the lower area, and when you zoom in, on this side, you can actually see one of the bridge arches where this side has collapsed. So this is the left side of the bridge, this is the right side of the bridge, and here's one of the Roman arches that held up this bridge. Now remember the map with the image of the castle. We showed this in a very recent video with the towers and the arrow slits. Once again, right here. And one final thing to show that doesn't even require you to look through the snow. What you're looking at right here is a bridge across this huge gully. There's a mountain range here and a giant rock here, and there's a passageway that goes through here, and there is a bridge that has been constructed across it. Here's a better view. See this? That's construction. Somebody built that. Because you can see the well-worn path brought up here. And they would come through here, and they would want to cross over to this side, and then come down through this region, or down here. Over here, what looks like remnants of ancient buildings. Because you can see how well spaced apart they are. How it looks like these are roads and intersections. This is the basic fundamental thing that makes Antarctica, to my mind, the single most important place on the planet. 80% of the drinkable fresh water is in a place where there used to be a civilization that we know virtually nothing about. The other place that we found those window slits that we saw on the map, and this is the confirmation. We're looking at Google Earth Pro, seeing things that were shown on maps as far back as 1500. This is the kicker for me, that what we're looking at here jives exactly with what people on the ground saw. So, anyway, at 15 months, listen to me, 15 minutes, I will leave it there, but it's a daunting idea of going to this place and beginning to settle it. But you have to imagine that that's probably what was told to the pilgrims, what was told to other explorers of the time, that it was a waste, and in their lifetimes, most of them didn't see what North America became. So, anyway, I will leave it there and leave you guys with an image that I think speaks greatly to what the future may hold. Like, share, subscribe.